with the universe, with creation and so on. Of course, I mean, God is the loftiest concept in Rumi. But strangely enough, the name God does not, the word God does not appear frequently in Rumi. He was so immersed in the idea of God, perhaps in the presence of God, and that he did not mention him. Perhaps he dare not mention him. When you are at the present of something, when you are one with something, united with something, then that something is so united with you, so close to you, that you even do not address him, you even do not mention him. And it is a sign of distance when you talk about something, when you mention the name of something. There is, a poem in Arabic. Of course, there were two lovers in the Arabic mythologies, Layla and Majnun. Now, Majnun was a poet, reportedly, so he actually addresses the readers of his stories and the people who come after him and hear his and her stories, and he said, never mention the name of Layla, of my beloved, because that might hurt her. Through mentioning him, actually you create some distance with her, so be careful about it. Now, what about God? As I said, the loftiest concept in Rumi is God, no doubt about it. He was not only the creator and not only the legislator, but also a beloved above all. And because of the love that Rumi declared to him, to God, and because of feeling that he was directly and immediately in his presence, he did not mention him very frequently. I'm not saying that not at all, because yes, there are places in Rumi where he naturally comes to the idea of God in order to pray him, in order to address him, in order to make some supplications, devotions and so on. But none of the 6 books of Matnavi, as I mentioned before, begins with the name of God, with the praise of God. No official, no formal mentioning of God you can find in the whole Rumi's works, in 60,000 verses and poems that we have from him. So God comes into things quite naturally, and when his experience actually allows him to name God, to mention him and to address him. He never plans, as I said, to do that. So when we say that the idea of God or the concept of God in Rumi, so we have to be aware of this natural place that God occupies in the whole system of Rumi. It is perhaps the whole thing. It is not something besides his system, something besides his other thoughts. It is so overwhelming and so comprehensive and so ever-present that he cannot feel his absence at all. Of course, by background he was a devout Muslim, no doubt about it, and he was a monotheist, and so all of the attributes and the descriptions of God which are there in the Quran and in the tradition of the Prophet and in the authentic pieces of the cultural pieces of Muslims, all was actually there, and Rumi did not doubt in any of them. But when it comes to the interpretation, then of course things become different. So he has his own interpretation of God. His religiosity was experiential religiosity, and because of that, all he says about God, about religion, about revelation, everything comes from his own personal individual experience. He's not follower of anybody. Actually, when it comes even to the Prophet, he's not a mere sheer follower of the Prophet. He shares the experience of the Prophet. That is the experiential religiosity. It is for the scholarly religiosity or for the experiential religiosity to follow the Prophet just blindly, obediently. But for the experiential religiosity, they actually try to share the experience of the Prophet. and to become a lesser prophet, so to speak, for themselves. And that was the role that the Rumi played, and the vision that he has got about himself, and the lesson that he taught to his audience implicitly. He is never explicit about none of this, because as you know, the cultural limitations actually limited him from saying these things quite clearly and vividly. Nevertheless, for the careful reader of his works and his poetry, this becomes evident and obvious as the reading goes on. Now, I mentioned in the last session that for Rumi, actually, the relationship between God and the universe and the world is a relationship between the being and non-being, the existence and non-existence. Actually, for him, the whole universe is non-existent, literally non-existent according to him. The whole universe is occupied by God and is nothing but God and manifestations of God and the attributes of God and the actions and the traces of God. All these are gods, and there is only one person, and only one person, who occupies the whole world of being, and that is God. The rest are nothing. And in order to convey the message, he gave us a number of images. The painter and the paint, you remember the reed and the blower in the reed, the player of the reed, and the lion on the banner and the wind that moves the banner, and so on and so forth. We remember all this. And this very clearly tells us that our actions, our movements are all only apparent. We think that we do something. We think that movements are ours. But really there is a wind behind us. There is a mover behind us. There is a shooter, according to his image again, behind us. We think that we are flying the arrow, but the shooter is actually there, is somebody else. So he is behind all this. So there is only one agent in the whole world, that is God. There is only one being in the whole world, that is God, and period. So there is nothing beside that. So the power of God, so overwhelming that leaves no room, no place for anything else. And as I said, this raised the question of the free will and so on and so forth, that he tries actually to address and to provide some sort of answer for it, which is a purely theological problem. We are not going to go into it. One of the main questions that arises out of this picture is the question of the justice of God. Now, this is very important, both from the point of view of theology and the point of ethics. Now, since he is the agent, since he is the main goal of the whole creation, the whole universe, and since he is behind any movement whatsoever in the world, so then where is his justice? If we are not, so to speak, free agents, as we think we are, so are we rewarded or perhaps punished for what we do in this world, and how the evils and the sufferings and the like are to be justified in this world? The problem of the justice. Let us, remember that for a person like Rumi, from the point of view of love, actually he doesn't expect justice from the beloved. It is for theologians who think that God is a good manager, is the ruler, is the king, and because of that image they expect God to be just like just king, a just ruler. But if you actually depict him as a beloved, so you wouldn't expect him to be just. Even the idea of justice does not come to your mind. And that's why most of poets, of thinkers and sooths, and include especially Rumi, that justice talk is not very prominent in their. If you go into Massad